Guys, welcome to a classic movie review of the 1949 World War II drama, The Small Back Room, starring David Farrar, Kathleen Byron and Jack Hawkins, directed by the esteemed Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger, and set in 1943, a time when the Germans were dropping explosive booby-traps on Britain. The Small Back Room's focus is on an embittered experimental weapons expert who's not only striving to disarm these weapons, but is also fighting his own personal battle against his addiction to alcohol. Now arriving after Powell and Pressburger's trio of stone-cold masterworks, A Matter of Life and Death, Black Narcissus and The Red Shoes, this movie didn't quite capture the imagination of a post-war audience looking for more upbeat entertainment, but in the 7.5 decades since, it's garnered a reputation of an unsung classic in British cinema and a rare spotlight on some of the unsung heroes of the Second World War, those boys in the small back rooms. Let's take a look. So The Small Back Room is set in the last years of World War II and tells the story of Sammy Rice, played by David Farrar. Sammy is a brilliant scientist working for the British Army's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit, his role being to study and to defuse unexploded bombs and defunct weapons. Now, this assignment places him in constant physical and mental peril. Much of this is down to the fact that he's lost his leg, or at least his foot, in an accident, and now must take painkillers constantly and try his best not to fall into a downward spiral of booze. And so this is classed as a war movie in that it's set in the period and that we have bomb disposals and talk of blackouts and those damn Jerrys. But this is really about Sammy's psychological deterioration. The fact that his disability makes him feel less of a man, inferior, to the point that he has this huge chip on his shoulder and treats everyone around him terribly, including his on-again, off-again girlfriend Susan, played by Kathleen Byron. And this is in fact a reunion between Farrar and Byron after 1947's Black Narcissus. She's absolutely amazing in that, by the way. If you've yet to see Black Narcissus, check that out too. Anyway, you have this guy whose professional life as a bomb technician involves focus and tension-filled and methodical process of disarming explosive devices, but he's full of pills and booze and his real life's just a mess. So there's these two sides to him that he has to balance and to reckon with. And so, yeah, perhaps audiences used to the Powell and Pressburger technicolor fantasies weren't really ready for something so traumatic. Now, what I love about The Small Back Room is the fact that it's a small-scale character piece. Small as in it has a tight cast, but also quite small in scale. There's no sweeping epic wartime filmmaking here. 95% of the plot takes place in small office rooms, flats, pubs, etc. We only really venture out into the fresh air for the movie's final act. Now, there's no doubt the film is also a critique of the bureaucracy of war, powerful men in boardrooms making decisions about weaponry without any facts or real experience. Now, the military top brass and the politicians here are pretty much just painted as buffoons for the most part, so there's certainly an anti-war vein running through The Small Back Room. So central to the movie is the performance by David Farrar, and I don't think that this was an easy role. It's quite a subtle performance for the most part, but he's great at showing small gestures and expressions, certainly when faced with the temptations of the bottle. There's a standout sequence in this movie when Powell and Pressburger engage in some crazy, surrealistic camera work to represent Sammy's internal struggle and his temptations towards opening a bottle of whiskey. It's crazily inventive stuff and very much inspired by the Salvador Dali and Alfred Hitchcock collaboration in 1945's Spellbound. Now, Kathleen Byron, who plays Susan, doesn't get as much to do here as she got to chew on in Black Narcissus, but certainly brings a bit of a grounded compassion to the mix. I mean, the film shows its age with some of its stand by your man message, but you need the love story element here, I think, so that you can see both the strain that the war put on relationships and to highlight what's worth fighting for. Now, of course, being a Powell and Pressburger venture, the film also features a ridiculous supporting cast with notable performances from Jack Hawkins, who plays basically the smarmy marketing guy for the weapons department, a young Michael Gough as Captain Dick Stewart, who enlists Sammy's help. And we've also got Cyril Cusack, Robert Morley, and look out for Sid James, great as Nuxie, the local barkeeper. Now, like I mentioned, Powell and Pressburger were fresh off The Red Shoes here, and that was a vivid Technicolor ballet dancing movie. So this is probably as far removed as you can get from that, I think. The duo, who were also known for their visual creativity, are in comparison to earlier movies quite restrained here, which is what the story requires, so it's fine. Now, the film's cinematography is by Christopher Chalice, who shot everything from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to 1971's Villain to 1984's Top Secret. Here, of course, it's all dark, shadowy spaces with the exception of some great exterior location work, including a weapons test filmed literally on top of Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain, and of course a bomb disposal finale filmed on the pebbly shores of a windswept Portland Bill on the southernmost point of Dorset. A great scene soundtracked only by the wind and the sound of pebbles loosening around an explosive device. Now, The Small Back Room isn't just a straightforward wartime thriller, but an exploration of trauma. The small back room of the title, referring both to those little offices that some of the unsung war heroes occupy, and also, to get all metaphorical for a moment, the parts of our protagonist's mind and the parts of ourselves that we tend to lock away so we can attempt to deal with internal struggles. Deep stuff if you choose to look at it that way. Either way, there's no doubting that David Farrar's Sammy is not the traditional hero that you often get to see in wartime movies. He's deeply flawed, with self-destructive tendencies, and is quite refreshing even today to see a hero who is unglamorous, mentally vulnerable, emotionally distant, but still in his own way undeniably heroic in his courage and commitment to carrying out his work. Now, such was the calibre of their work, it's fair to say Powell and Pressburger made better movies than The Small Back Room, and therefore this does get overshadowed, which is a little bit unfair, really. There's no razzmatazz here, but there's still excellent performances from Farrar and Byron in a compelling story with some great, eerie visuals and a great supporting cast. Now, this is up there with some of the best war dramas made about World War II that don't feature any actual combat. And this was also up there with the likes of 1945's The Lost Weekend in terms of well-constructed explorations of man's battle with substance abuse. And it's basically one of the filmmaking duo's most mature and complex works, showing that they have as good a handle on the theatrical and the fantastical as they do with this kind of difficult, emotional and psychological drama. So The Small Back Room for me was the final great work by Powell and Pressburger. Their filmmaking partnership would come to an end in 1957. The pair separated to pursue their individual careers, although they would briefly reunite in the mid-60s and early 70s. Powell, of course, would go on to make controversial projects such as 1960's Peeping Tom and 1969's Age of Consent. But from 1940 to 1949, they made some of the most influential films of all time, and as a duo, they were one of the most foremost partnerships in film history. So The Small Back Room is a full stop of sorts to a sentence beginning with the tally-ho propaganda of films like One of Our Aircraft is Missing and via the romantic but slightly cynical Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and A Matter of Life and Death, and finishing up alone on a desolate beach with a booby-trap bomb and a pair of pliers. Go check it out.